So thank you all for being here, and thanks for staying with me and listening. I know that, whether you're growing right now or hiring right now, you will be at some point touching recruitment or having an opportunity to help your teams scale and help them grow. A small story that I wanted to kind of share with you was I had an opportunity, 2011, I stumbled upon a video podcast, This Week in Startups. I was a young junior recruiter and had an opportunity to listen to this CEO on this podcast talking about this little scrappy company that he was trying to build, headquartered in Copenhagen, and just got funding to grow their team in San Francisco, and they were, again, democratizing this thing called game development. Found that to be really interesting and kind of bizarre, and in such an audacious, insane goal, I really started to kind of dig a little bit deeper and follow. I ended up actually having an opportunity to be Unity's first global recruiter in-house, and I'm going to walk you a little bit through some of the lessons that I learned that I've taken through my career on really seeing that divergence of building amazing community to the company, to not only to grow your developer base. So it's a little bit about my team. Like I said, I've got 11 years of recruiting in-house. Where Rhum, I'm going to be sharing a little bit of some of the tools that we use with helping our studios at the end. So if you want to connect with us or just find me after, you absolutely can. How many of you are familiar with Simon Sinek and start with why? Okay. So not all of you, okay. The golden circle and kind of starting with why is what you do and the company that you have is not the hook. I'm going to repeat that again. What you do and what you're building here is not the hook that's going to get people into your studios. It's not going to get people investing their passion, their creativity, their energy into helping you grow and into helping you grow your product. Why matters. Why is actually really the core of what matters most. And a lot of what we're going to talk about, or what I'm going to talk about over the next few minutes. It's the purpose, and your purpose is the key to connecting with talent. It's what's going to keep them up working weekends, keep them working, just investing their energy, their creative energy into you. Starting with why, and there's some fantastic things on YouTube from Simon's TEDx talk that he did, but again, I'll leave the links for them at the end of the call, at the end of the presentation. He really talks a lot about, having that opportunity for your leaders and your talent teams, or just your people in general, to really understand what it is that you're doing, why you're trying to do this, what problem are you solving, why are you differentiating yourselves, and what is your purpose here. So the biggest lesson that I've heard, and I think it's really great kind of being in the middle of this track session today, because there's so much, I've been listening and tracking so much data coming out of our two talks already, that building community and starting with why is very qualitative. It's really hard to kind of think a little bit about, okay, well, this is our why, this is why we're doing this, how are we even really going to track that success in terms of scaling the team? And it is really difficult. But it's the reason that, for a lot of people here that might come from, or might be in indie teams, or might be with companies that are quite small, came to your companies and came to join your leaders for a reason, and you saw a vision in your leaders and you believed in what they were doing, so much so that you may have left bigger companies, left bigger paychecks, left benefits and everything else to come and join this quest. So building that community and starting with that community to really think about, okay, well, why does this matter to us, is the most important thing when you're thinking about hiring when you don't have a huge product or brand to stand on. The community is going to be there to really help, evangelize what you're doing. They're going to be your cheerleaders. They're going to be your ambassadors when you're not. They're going to be the people that are helping you bring people to your studios and to your companies when you're not there or when you're doing other things. And I found this to be especially true at Unity when I started in 2011, was that, the company was so small, but at the same time, they had this incredible community of developers and creators. Many of you probably all in this room today or have been, in interaction with Unity in some way, shape, or form, that just loved this company so much. And I think they were, and at least in my belief, they were fell in love or became passionate about that mission and that purpose to do something greater to democratize game development. Came across this guy at a conference, this was back in 2012, who actually, this is real, actually tattooed a Unity logo onto his arm. It wasn't something that we were passing out at a conference, and that just shows you, to me, obviously really absurd, but also just incredible that somebody cares so much about what you're doing, and that, back in the day, when you think of how Unity as a company is now, they really had an opportunity to change a lot of lives. People that were able to develop games and follow their dreams and follow their own curiosity with technology that was never accessible to them before. So when you think about your talent, when you think about where you're going, obviously there's a lot of different things. Isaac mentioned something earlier, or right at the end of his last talk, that less than 50% of the people interact with UA ads. The same is true for job ads as well. Unfortunately, we spend a lot of money, and you're going to spend a lot of money thinking about how to publicize and how to advertise for your openings. Unless you're, again, putting your why and really thinking about the various stages of, does talent even know who you are? Okay, are they considering what you're doing and they think it's interesting? Are they thinking about coming on board? Are they interested in actually hearing what you're doing when joining your forces? There's a lot of different pieces to talent's kind of connection or beginning of connection with your company and your brand that's really important to consider, so that as you're thinking about advertising and as you're thinking about job ads, you're really spending that money in a much, I think, a much more precise and in a more impactful way than a traditional job ad. So I always like to think about striking that balance between acquisition and retention, where you can actually, again, focus on building that community. Talent acquisition, and the same thing in the UA side, is you got these referrals are king. Knowing and being able to access your network and talking to your network constantly and sharing content. Sharing content and contributing back in a way where I talk about kind of Reddit, Discord, Quora, and Facebook. Is anybody on Discord right now for connecting with their communities? Aside of games? Yeah, awesome. So it's a really great way to make sure that you're having meaningful conversations and having conversations with your player community where they're thinking about, wow, they're doing really great things here, or they're really building great products. How can I consider myself to be a part of this team and actually join what they're doing? Celebrating those wins and losses and celebrating diversity as well is a really important piece to remember, that when you're hiring or when you will be hiring, just putting information out into your community on what you need is not a way to actually give back. So contribute, share content, share opportunities for people to share their artwork or share information. Those are things that really matter. Instagram posts and stories are really well received. I think when I spent recently $700 on a job board that yielded me 2 resumes that weren't anywhere near what we actually needed, I realized that you can spend half of that money on building an Instagram post that's sponsored, connecting to your target audience, connecting to your player, your /target community, and really getting some more engagement and more visibility on what you actually need. Talent fairs are really great, and has anybody heard of Gamesmith or started using Gamesmith? Awesome. So I've been spending some time. Gamesmith is, they're started by they're a new company, a new platform, and they're kind of thinking about themselves as like the LinkedIn specifically for the game industry. So you have makers on Gamesmith, they have a database, it's specifically only for game development studios, but I've been speaking with them a lot, and I really love what they're doing because they don't allow agency recruiters, which is ironic because I'm actually kind of like an external agency recruiter, but I do think they're really awesome because we work embedded, so we kind of have this unique relationship with how we support different studios and creative companies. But Gamesmith is a fantastic way to actually access a database and access a community of people, of makers in our industry that are considering new opportunities and are engaging and sharing their content on the platform itself. Retention is another big piece, obviously. Talent acquisition and hiring and growing your studios isn't important unless you're thinking about how to actually keep those amazing people in-house. Scheduling posts, so content and social media obviously can be really overwhelming when you're thinking about building your talent and your people brand and building those relationships that last. So there's tons of technology and tons of tools out there that allow you to automate social posts and content. And the same is true for thinking about your talent acquisition, that you're constantly driving new content and information out there, and just interacting with your people, interacting with them, and allowing your community to, give you feedback, to talk about, an update. If, sharing things like birthdays, or even just like, renovations in your studio, small things like that give people a glimpse into your world that just allow them to kind of strengthen that connection. And the last one is really checking that ego or stopping to check the ego at the door. I always like to think of myself, or think of like any of the studios that I work with, is you're not the best. Come in with a sense of humility and an opportunity to be vulnerable and be the underdog. I think at the end of the day, people love an opportunity to join a team and to join a quest where you're fighting against the Goliath, and you're up against an opportunity to create an impact and have an impact in this community that is bigger than the role that you're actually doing yourself. So being vulnerable and being the underdog can take a lot of different forms, obviously in smaller studios. I think one of the things is just being honest and having that sense of humility. Hyper Hippo is one of the studios that I work really closely with, and I know there's a couple of speakers here today, and they share their story online, and it's a story of initial failures. It's a story of falling on your face and getting up and kind of being that phoenix that rises out of the ashes. And we get a lot of really good feedback from talent and just from people in general that have an opportunity to learn about why they're there, where they came from, and why they're making games in the first place. As you grow and as you become a 500-person studio or a 1,000-person studio or a 10,000-person studio or company for that matter, connecting to that why and where it all started allows your people and your talent to remember and stay connected to the energy that they invest into you every single day. That's it. I will have some, if you are hiring or if you're growing right now and you want to better understand how to track things like, okay, so we're putting social posts down and we're job ads and things like that, I'm going to share a lot of the tools or some of the basic tools that I use to track our candidate and talent flow, as well as some of the things we use to help curate and pull that why and that story with the clients that we work with. So if you're interested, connect with me and I'll be happy to share those templates with you. Thanks.
Much. So, the thing that I found interesting about this is that the comparisons for me are about, if you look at trying to get your audience growth versus your talent growth, there's some key parameters in there which are actually, I think, the softer things that you talked about, this ability to have authenticity, the ability to be able to communicate the values of the company. I think those are things that we often forget about when we're looking at kind of, how many installs we get and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And it's a little bit to me about the kind of idea of the difference between brand marketing versus direct response. I'm a classically trained marketeer, so I have to think like this. Do you think, what is at the heart, do you think, of the problem? Is it, let's say, I think there's a similarity in the problem, which is, what is the heart of what the company is? And a lot of marketing people are focused on what's the most expedient way to get somebody. Do you think that there's more lessons like that some of the people in the room could learn from?
In terms of finding the why? Or
finding the why.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that, at the end of the day, and I said that kind of earlier, is that you've all come together, or you're working in companies and you're working with teams where beyond the what that was exciting to you, I think looking internally as well and thinking about why you show up to do what you do and what you're passionate about is a great way to connect to your company. We forget very easily when we've got that game that's making the millions, or we're working with a company that's experiencing hyper growth, that everything then tends to refocus and reshift into the what's. But that qualitative piece of the why is where you keep your community strong, and through the thick and thin as well. There's going to be games that aren't going to be doing well, or times where you did a release or you did a new feature that didn't do well in your community or didn't do well with your players. So it's trying to find that balance of making sure that you're constantly reinvesting into building community and not just a network.
Yeah, I think that whole principle of the authenticity and kind of the values that you have as a company are factors that are going to help people stay with you and almost filter the right people to identify your product.